Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing one of our tailored deep dives, and this one, well, it goes into some pretty interesting, maybe unusual places.
We're looking at a YouTube video, the source you sent over. It's from the Jasno Widzi Krzysztof Jackowski official channel.
Right, the title translates to something like Attempt to Contact a Recently Departed Colleague, a Vision.
Exactly. And it's essentially the speaker's personal story of trying to, well, connect with someone who'd recently passed on.
And more than just the attempt, right?
Yeah.
He shares his thoughts, his reflections on the afterlife that came out of it. And then there's a bit on weather, too, interestingly enough.
Yeah, quite the mix. But the core of it is this very personal account of trying to reach across, that divide.
That's what grabbed me. It's this blend of like profound personal experience
Yeah.
and these really big speculative ideas about what happens next, plus a weather forecast.
Definitely intriguing. So should we start with the contact attempt itself?
Yeah, let's dig into that first. What was his motivation? Did he just decide to do this, or?
Well, he describes it more like being drawn into it, almost like he felt he had the deceased's permission, maybe. He also mentioned that he's done this sort of thing before, and sometimes it led to like explanations for certain events. So there's a history there for him.
Okay, so it wasn't completely out of the blue for him personally. And who was this person he was trying to contact? A close friend?
No, actually. More of an acquaintance, he said. Someone from his neighborhood in Jucho. This person used to visit the speaker's neighbor.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, an older guy had some health problems, so not immediate family or a best friend, which is kind of interesting in itself.
It is, yeah. So what happened when he made the attempt, or around the time the person passed?
So he talks about feeling this physical lightness right around the time the acquaintance actually died.
A lightness.
Yeah. And this feeling then led into a vision. He saw the deceased in a park, specifically a park in Jusho.
Okay, a park.
Yeah.
That seems specific. Did he know why that park?
Well, that's the kicker. Initially, no. It didn't immediately make sense. Apparently, the guy lived in an apartment block or something.
Sure.
But then he mentions this vision to his neighbor, the one the deceased used to visit.
Damn.
And the neighbor drops this bombshell. Turns out the deceased man and his wife had actually lived for half their lives in a nursing home located in that exact park.
Seriously?
In the park.
Yep. That's where they'd met the neighbor and his wife years and years ago. And the speaker, he apparently had no idea about this part of the man's life.
Wow. Okay, that changes things. That's quite a coincidence, if you want to call it that.
It's certainly a striking detail, isn't it? The vision he has lines up with this unknown fact about the person's past. Really makes you think about, well, where that information could have come from.
Absolutely. So after getting this confirmation, this unexpected validation, how did the speaker then interpret the whole experience? What did it suggest to him about the afterlife? Okay, so he starts reflecting on this. One of the first things he mentions is what the deceased seemed to communicate about the afterlife itself.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was described as beautiful, specifically mentioning places with a lot of booze and many watery areas.
Huh.
Yeah.
Booze and water. That's specific.
Oh.
Not quite harps and clouds then.
Definitely not. It's a very earthly kind of image, almost. Gives it a strange personal feel.
Yeah, it does. What else? He mentioned something about space, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The elongation of space. That was a key concept he brought up.
Elongation of space. What did he seem to mean by that? It sounds a bit sci-fi.
Well, the way he explained it, it wasn't necessarily about like physical stretching. It was more about perspective. Like, your viewpoint broadens, expands.
Okay.
So things that seem separate or far away in our normal lives might become connected, accessible. You can access places, maybe even understanding that you couldn't before. Like the boundaries just dissolve or shift.
So it's like a change in perception. How you experience reality itself changes.
That seems to be the idea, yeah. A fundamental shift in how consciousness interacts with, well, everything. Not just ceasing to be.
Fascinating. And then there was another term, lapidary space.
Yeah.
That sounded even more abstract.
It did. And he admitted struggling to define it clearly. He even looked up the word lapidary, relating to stone inscriptions.
Right, yeah.
But he landed on this idea that after death, you have to kind of open yourself up again, relearn or re-accept everything in this new context.
It's like a reset.
Sort of. He described an initial feeling of maybe being alone, but then the potential arises to perceive other souls, other consciousnesses within that space. So it requires some kind of internal opening up.
Okay, so it's a process. Not just arriving somewhere finished, but more like tuning in maybe. Adjusting your spiritual senses, as you put it later.
Exactly. He described the space itself as initially feeling pale and foggy, indistinct. But then as this realization or understanding dawns, it becomes distinct,
Right.
clearer.
So there's a journey even within that state. It's not static.
Apparently not. And another point he made, which I thought was interesting, was that this post-death world isn't necessarily wildly, fundamentally different from the world we know.
Really? How so?
He talked about the soul returning to a world it kind of originated from, that the reality itself might be similar, but you need to awaken these spiritual senses to perceive it properly again.
Like the underlying reality is there, but our tools for perceiving it change after death.
That seems to be the implication. It's quite a thought. And linked to that, he mentioned something pretty surprising, maybe even confronting.
Which was?
Feeling like you don't miss the people you left behind.
Oh, wow. It's hard to imagine from this side.
It is. The way he framed it, though, was more about the potential for new interactions, new connections within the sort of, he called it a duplicated reality.
Duplicated reality.
Yeah,
Right.
so maybe the attachments change form, or the focus shifts entirely to this new plane of existence and the connections possible there.
Okay. Still a challenging concept. So overall, his picture of the afterlife sounds quite dynamic.
Very much so. He summed it up as a world of many experiences. An infinite world of experiences, actually, drawing from all the lives lived.
Infinite experiences.
And characterized by harmony, he said, which stands in contrast to, the conflicts and struggles we often face here. It's ultimately a hopeful, expansive view.
It really is. A continuation, maybe even a culmination, focused on harmony. Okay, so after all that deep philosophical reflection,
Yeah.
he just pivots to the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite abruptly. Someone asked him about the summer in Poland, and bam, new topic.
Talk about a change of pace.
Yeah.
So what was the forecast? Sunshine and roses after contemplating infinity.
Not quite roses, maybe just intense sunshine. He predicted a long heat wave for Poland, potentially coming in 2 phases.
3 phases, okay. Just Poland?
No, he said it would likely affect Central and Southern Europe more broadly, too. And he warned it could reach historical levels, record-breaking heat.
Oh, wow, okay. That's serious. Anything else specific?
He did mention a risk of large fires, particularly in Greece and other southern European countries, because of the heat and dryness.
Right. That often goes hand in hand with extreme heat waves.
Yeah.
So from the afterlife to potential climate impacts, that's quite the range.
Definitely. And there were a couple of other quick topics he touched on, too, right at the end.
Yeah, just briefly. What were they again?
Let's see. He dismissed the Big Bang Theory as something our minds just can't really grasp.
Okay. Fair enough, maybe.
And someone asked about Yuri Gagarin on the moon. He was quite firm. No, Gagarin was only in orbit. And he also threw in some skepticism about the U.S. moon landings while he was at it.
Ah, okay. Covering all bases there.
And then one final thing, a quick observation on politics.
Oh, right. International stuff. What was that?
He mentioned seeing a kind of calm before the storm globally, specifically noting that China seemed to be ignoring Trump's attempts at communication or tariff changes. Just a brief comment.
Interesting observation. And then he wrapped it up.
Yeah, he said he was stopping because of the upcoming Easter holiday. So that was the end of that session.
Quite a journey in one video. From trying to contact the departed to visions of parks and nursing homes.
For reflections on booze and watery areas in the afterlife, elongated space.
Lapidary spaces, duplicated realities, infinite experiences.
And then boom, a massive heat wave prediction and a quick take on geopolitics.
It really covers a lot of ground. So recapping this for our listeners, the core was this personal attempt at contact, the resulting vision, and the really unexpected confirmation about the deceased's past life in that specific park.
Yeah, that connection was key. And flowing from that, all these reflections on what the afterlife might be, like this dynamic, sensory, harmonious place of infinite experience.
And then, of course, the practical, it's speculative, look ahead at a potentially record-breaking summer heat wave for Europe.
It's a unique blend, isn't it? Deeply personal intuition rubbing up against these huge existential questions, alongside a very concrete, if predicted, weather event.
It really is.
Yeah.
It leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Like, considering his whole account, what is the relationship between our own consciousness, our intuition, and the reality out there, both now and maybe later?
Or even just how do we square these kinds of personal, visionary experiences with our more, scientific or conventional ways of understanding the world? Where do they fit?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely something to mull over. Well, thanks for diving into this rather unusual source with us today.
Always interesting. Thanks for having me.